And this is LifeGroup in a global pandemic. Now, one of the things that you may be experiencing, that I'm experiencing these days, is a lack of clarity in vision for the future. There's something about being in this season that, with plans being canceled and things always shifting around and the numbers changing, that it's hard to see out in front of us, even a month or a quarter ahead. And what we want to do during this season in Life Group is to build spiritual community and relationship with one another, but we also want to attune our vision to see God's kingdom breaking in and be able to see it and identify it and participate in it even during this time. So we're going to look at Jesus' ministry. And Jesus taught his disciples to see the kingdom by teaching them stories that are called parables. Now, you might be familiar with the parables. They're, on first glance, very easy to understand. They're stories that are drawn from everyday life, stories of farmers casting seeds, or bridegrooms and brides going to a wedding banquet. But if you look at these stories, the more you read them, on first glance, they're easy to understand. But the more you engage them and read them, the more complex they are. One of my preaching professors once said that parables are a beginning preacher's dream and an experienced preacher's nightmare, because the more you engage these stories, it's almost like they're layers upon layers of meaning. You can walk into them and there's a trap door that will open and drop you down into a different level of meaning. And this is nowhere more the case than in the 15th chapter of the Gospel of Luke, where Jesus tells not just one story, but three consecutive stories of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost boy. Now, let me set it up. In this particular moment in the gospel, Jesus is surrounded by some enemies, folks who have come to challenge his ministry, to insult him, and to challenge and push back against him. They were religious scribes and Pharisees. And there were also groups of people who were attracted to Jesus. And he was sitting down with some of those attracted to him, tax collectors and sinners, prostitutes and poor folk, and he's teaching them about the kingdom. And some of these scribes and Pharisees come around on kind of an outer circle around this meal, and they begin grumbling, and they say, spitting insults in his direction, and they say, "This is a guy who's a glutton and a drunkard. He's a friend of tax collectors and sinners." And in response to these comments from the scribes and Pharisees, Jesus doesn't cut back or try to cancel these guys. Instead, Jesus tells stories. He says, who among you, if they had 100 sheep and lost one of them, would not leave the 99 in the pen and go out and find the one who is lost? Who among you would not, like a woman who lost one silver coin, leave the whole pile of money over here and seek out and sweep through the whole house to find that one silver coin? And when she found it, rejoiced and threw a party to rejoice in finding the one lost coin. Now, those stories seem pretty simple and straightforward upon first hearing. And we all kind of know these stories of things being lost, or at least I do. It's kind of a running joke at the office and in my family that I'm the kind of person who loses things. A couple Christmases ago, the staff got me a fanny pack so that I would keep up and remember things like my wallet and my keys and things like that. There was one particular moment in seminary when I had a wedding. I was living in Atlanta. I had a wedding in Jackson, Mississippi, and I lost my wallet, and I didn't have money, like gas money, to make it to Jackson, Mississippi, and I had to borrow money from my friends. I'm known to be a person who loses things. And this is, maybe you have those stories as well of things that are lost. But and on one hand, you have to go find the thing that's lost. But in these stories, it's not obvious that you would leave 99 sheep in order to just go out to leave them stranded while you go out and find the one that's lost. It's not obvious if you're running a cost benefit analysis that you would just abandon your $95 to go find the $5 that is lost. And it's also not obvious that once you found the money that you would spend all of it to throw a party to rejoice with your friends. It doesn't exactly compute. But there's something about these stories that communicates the heart of the gospel, the heart of the kingdom of God when it breaks through. It's Jesus trying to teach his disciples that what it is to see the kingdom breaking through is to see God responding with passion and desire to take a situation that is incomplete and make it complete, a situation that is broken and to see it restored. And when the restoration comes and when the completeness and the wholeness is restored and the tension is resolved, there's great rejoicing in heaven for the completeness being found. This is amplified in the telling of these stories when Jesus offers the third parable, not a lost sheep or a lost coin. Those are important things perhaps that get lost, but there's nothing more important than losing your child and finding them. And so Jesus tells a third story. There was a man who had two sons, and you know the story. The first son comes and says, "Dad, give me my inheritance. I want what's coming to me." And the father, with compassion, offers it, knowing full well that the son doesn't have the emotional maturity or the spiritual maturity to handle that. So what happens? The son ends up in the far country in the pig slop. He comes to his senses and comes back home. And when he comes back home, the father doesn't simply stand on the porch in fatherly umbrage and judgment for the son who clearly got what was coming to him. That's not how the father acts at all. The father has been looking out the road in front of the house for days upon days. And when he finally sees his son coming home, he takes off running. He throws the robe around his son and takes off the signet ring and says to the servants, "Go kill the fatted calf, for the son who is lost is now found." It's a beautiful story of the heart of God and the kingdom breaking through, the longing of God to see people that have been lost restored, family members that have been lost brought back into the family. But there's a catch, right? And the catch is the older son, he's frankly really upset that his father has done this, has offensively offered grace and forgiveness without any kind of forgiveness being offered on the part of the son. And so the older son is like, "Look, I've been here the whole time. I've done nothing wrong. I have been righteous. I have been good. I am the kind of person who you've always expected me to be. And this is how I get repaid." And the father comes to him as well. And what you see in the story is that he's also the threat is also that the older son, who'd been there all along, is also going to be cut off from grace and joy. And the father says, "Oh, my son, you have been with me the whole time, and everything that I have is yours." And in that offering, you see God's kingdom breaking through in even a deeper dimension. And so for us, I think this is an opportunity to struggle with and wrestle with the reality of God's kingdom breaking through when we see it. And this is what I would ask you to think about and maybe talk about tonight in conversation. Where do you experience incompleteness? Where do you see a sense of loss or tension that is unresolved? Where are there particular realities or people that need to be brought back in to wholeness and healing and restoration? Maybe that's a place even in a time of pandemic when it's hard to see what the future holds. Maybe you don't need to see too far ahead. Maybe you can see a little bit more clearly where God's desire is bringing the kingdom to bear even now.